Hello, my name is Scott Dobbins. I'm a retired station commander from Marietta Fire Department, Marietta, Georgia. This is a follow-up video from one I produced in September where I basically went over your health care and your pension and where that came from. All right, after that we had open enrollment at the city. The HR department at the meeting made some statements, kind of really upset the crowd because they're making statements and they're not going to follow what is basically an implied contract and the pension rules. So, after the meeting, I told some people I'd get in touch with attorneys and follow up. Now, here's the issue. It's hard finding attorneys that will be willing to sue a city. It's just, to me, that's just how it kind of is. All right, and then on top of that, we're an odd duck that we didn't pay Social Security and Medicare, so we're under that 218 agreement. That being said, there's very few attorneys that even know what one of those is, and if you're not in that, if that's not your scope of practice, you're not going to feel comfortable doing it. So they don't want anything to do with it. And so I've gone through several different attorneys, and it takes a while because I'll send them, I'll finally find somebody that'll actually even talk to me, and they'll agree, and I'll send them paperwork, and they'll review the paperwork, feedback, and a lot of times they'll bail out, or somebody else that's in their partnership bails out, or somebody we're going to use as a litigator bails out, and so I have to move on. So that kind of takes a while. Now currently I'm talking with an attorney in Atlanta. And any attorney will call you after 6 o'clock and talk to you for an hour. That's a pretty good person, in my opinion. So that's a hope. So I just want to let you know I'm not sitting around idle. I'm trying to do that where I'm trying to run farm and do everything else I've got going on up here. All right. That being said, we talked about the two issues that was basically facing everybody, and it's the employees' health care and the spousal health care. Okay, well, here's the problem. It's not two, it's four. We got four problems going on. First issue, let me give a little update again, or a little information again. City opted out of Social Security and Medicare in 1980. And in 1981, the city agreed to pick up at 100% of the cost of employee health care, but only upon retirement. That's the first issue. They're going to pay 100%. Well, now the big thing is if you're qualified for Medicare, or they tell you have to sign up for Medicare regardless if you're qualified or not, that you got to sign up for Medicare, and they don't have to pay for the Medicare increases, the cost. They only have to pay for you what's covered by the city side. Well, that's crap. And the reason it is because when they did that was in 81. They had just opted out of Social Security and Medicare. They knew they were the only player. There was no other agency. So for those of us that work 2 and 3 jobs most time through our career and we own Social Security and Medicare, we never paid Medicare at the city. That's none of their business. That's our funds. They can't touch it. They can't ask for it. They can't do anything with it. They're under contract to provide our health care, period. All right, second issue, spousal. All right, both of the pension plans, the 4022 and the 4532, have a similar statement in it. And they say that the city can amend the rules from time to time, but no such amendment shall reduce the accrued benefit of any participant or beneficiary. Well, the city likes to call that locked in. Well, that's your locked in rate. No, it's not locked in, so you can't change it. So once you accrued it, it's not gone. You can't do anything. It's locked in. So what happens, I'm going to give you an example. When I retired, my spouse locked in, let's call it $500 a month for health care. So I pay $500. Now, they codified it, more or less, in the pension plan. Could they go down? And they said, yes, we can go down. And when we come back up, we can come back up. But we can't exceed the locked-in rate. Well, now they're going, well, that doesn't apply to Medicare. Medicare is just a vendor. That's all it is in a nutshell. You go from having private health care up until you hit 65, and then you go under Medicare if you're Medicare eligible, or you choose to go under. Now, back to my point here, I'll be Medicare eligible, but it's because I worked other jobs. So that's not the city's. Where it gets interesting is everybody hired after April of 86, the city had to start paying Medicare on their behalf. Excuse me. They had to pay Medicare on their behalf. That doesn't change the fact that the city's responsible for paying for them. Where do you think they're supposed to pay for Medicare from? They're not in Social Security. All they have is their pension. Pension can't be reduced. You can't reduce the accrued benefit. So you're still on the hook for paying for it. It doesn't matter who the vendor is, public or private. So that's issue 1 and issue 2. Issue 3 is the 457 plan. All right. For people that don't know what a 457 plan is, it's similar to a 401k. It's just the government version of it. And I'll give you an example. Under the 457 plan, firefighters can retire, can start drawing their benefits at age 50. That's about 9.5 years, really, before people on 401k can. The reason being, firefighters die at a quicker rate. They're more likely to die of cancer. So they allow them to draw it sooner because their life expectancy is not as long. So anyway, under the 457 plan, which they have Nationwide and Mission Square there, I'm under Nationwide. There was no city matching with that. That was money that we had to struggle to set aside, especially under Bruton, because there was no pay raise system there under Bruton. Not a pay plan. You got a random pay raise every now and then, but there was not a pay plan. A pay plan says you get 3 this year, 3%. The next year you'll get 5. If you get promoted, you get 8. You know, that's a pay plan. They haven't had one in years. So, 457 plan. All of a sudden, I'm retired. I'm one of those that attract my money pretty close, and I'm losing money. Can't figure out why. So, I contact Nationwide, the local rep for Marietta. He never will call me back, which I thought was odd, but he never would. So I started calling the 1-800 number at Nationwide, and every time you call there, you get a different person. No, they're like reading off a chart. So I couldn't get an answer there. What was going on? Why am I losing money? So I finally ended up doing some research. I found some guy's phone number. It showed him as like higher up executive in the company. I called him. He's like, "How'd you get my number?" I was like, "Well, here's what I got." And he's like, "No." And he tried to explain to you who he was. And I said, "Look, I got a problem. I need help." And after he listened to me, he goes, "Yeah, that's not right." So he set me up with somebody else. Their comment was, "Well, it's basically truth in how we're saying the fees are being paid. It's truth in the disclosure, more or less, of how the fees are done." Said in the past you were paying these fees, but it was just buried in the paperwork and you didn't know it. And I said, "Well, I kind of understand that if I was getting the same amount of money." I said, if you're burying the fees in there and I'm getting a return that's got X amount of dollars in it, if you show me the fees that are there, I should still get X amount of dollars. I said, I'm getting less. So that's a problem. So not really knowing what was going on, I filed an open records request with the city, and the city sends all these different contracts. One of the contracts, the city in March of 2023, they started taking a fee for themselves out of our 457 plan. They created like a deferred comp committee. That's the city manager, the HR director, finance director, payroll director, and they're going to give us this professional advice. Well, let me give you a hint, Mr. Wizard. I'm already paying Nationwide professional advice. Why would I want to pay 4 unqualified people for professional advice? Y'all aren't professionals. They're professionals. And I'm in the fixed account, so I dang sure don't need professional advice just to leave money sitting in one spot. So I'm already paying a fee out. Now I'm paying it twice. Now my view is this violation of the takings clause in the Constitution, or is theft by taking by the city, which is a crime. We're going to find out one way or the other. But anyhow, so they're taking money out of our 457 plan that they're returning to the coffers of the city. If you're in Mission Square, the Nationwide statements actually say we're taking this out. The Mission Square, I think it's actually buried in it. Theirs is kind of weird. And I'll give you an example. It says that, we'll say 6.5% is going to be given as a fee. This is a round figure. We're going to give 6.5% to Mission Square as a fee for handling this account. And of that, Mission Square will keep 5%. But they don't say where the other 1.5% is going. So I think it's all probably getting kicked back to the city. Like they need the money kicked back to the city. So that's an issue. They're taking money out of our 457 plan. Fourth issue is the big issue, in my opinion. It's a really big issue. And it never was an issue until Bruton came in. And the reason it wasn't an issue is, I don't want to dump off this on the ground. The reason it wasn't an issue is until Bruton came in, city manager, fire chiefs, everybody, they were kind of treated the same. But that has changed under Bruton. Bruton has been so overpaid as city manager that he is causing a clause to be invoked. In my opinion, if I was sitting on the pension board, which I did sit on for 7 years, I'd be asking some questions, and we'd be having some heart-to-heart discussions. And what happens is both pension plans, the 4022 pension plan and the 4532 pension plan, both in Article 12, miscellaneous, Section 5, says discrimination. And I'll just read one of them because they're close. The employer, through the pension board, shall administer the plan in a uniform and consistent manner with respect to all participants, and shall not permit discrimination in favor of supervisory or highly paid employees, elected or appointed members of the governing authority, the chief legal officer, or any associate legal officer of the city, or any municipal officer elected or appointed to preside over the court of said city. What does that mean? You can't reward one person up here and then everybody else down here, but that's what they're doing. Now here's the bigger issue. The person they're rewarding is the city manager. The city manager, by code, is tasked with making sure they follow the rules of the city. Those rules were written years ago by different elected officials. People, in my opinion, after years of fighting from employees, said, hey, we can do better. And these are the rules they came up with. They're not following. A big issue is the pay plan. They're supposed to have a pay plan for the employees and a pay scale. Now, a pay plan says that you'll make 3% this year, 5% next year. If you get promoted, you'll get 8%. You'll get this, you'll get that. They don't have any of that. The employees don't have a clue what they're going to get year to year. And that's a problem. All right, so how does this affect people? I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use me, and then I'm going to use a mock one. When Bill Bruton came to work there in 2000, I'd been a station commander for 3 years. I was making about $60,000 a year. When I retired 14 years later, I was making $84,000 a year. Now, the city manager during that same time frame, his pay went from $96,000 to $187,500. He got a 95% pay raise in that 14-year period of time. He didn't get promoted. He didn't test or do qualifications. He didn't have to do any of that stuff. He's in the same grade. Had I got a 95% pay raise, just in the percentages, I'm not talking about money, percentages, same percentages, instead of retiring at $84,000 a year, I should have retired at $117,000. Well, $117,000, when you do the math, is about a $20,000 increase in your pension plan. So as of date, I've lost about $220,000. All right, now let's take, say, a mechanic came in over there, and he's on a different scale. I don't know what mechanic scales are over there, but he came in at $30,000 in 2000. He hired in the exact same time Bruton did. Bruton came at $96,000. This guy came in at $30,000. Well, I've got Bruton's contracts all the way up to 2023. I don't have 24 and don't have 25. But up to 23, he had a 275% pay increase. So somebody that came in making $30,000 a year in 2000, in 2023 should have been making $82,500 a year. And I highly doubt that's happening for anybody that's remained in the same grade. That's what I'm talking about, like a firefighter. If a firefighter hired in making $30,000, never got promoted, didn't go to paramedic school, rope rescue, any of that stuff. At 23 years, he should be making $82,500. All right, so that's a problem. And I can tell you, you watch my hand here. See this right here? When I sat on the pension board, I'd watch people stare at Bill Bruton and Philip Goldstein, who used to be a councilman there, and they'd stare at them as we were voting, and they'd wait to see how their hand went up. And however their hand went up, they went up with them. Now I'm going to tell you, if you're electing people to sit on that pension board, y'all need to sit them down and go, how are you voting on our behalf? Because those members are there to represent you. They're not there to represent the city. The city has people representing them. They need people there to represent the employees. Okay, so on that discrimination side, here's a problem. Every time, this is where I'm thinking the core of the issue is coming in here. Every time Bill Bruton gets a pay raise, the elected official's pension goes up. All right, so I filed an open records request in 2023. And the part-time employee elected officials in 2023 Their pensions was based on $57,421.29. That was as July 1st, 2022. That's pretty good for a part-time employee. And so that's the issue. Every time Bruton gets a raise, their pension increases. So the underlying issue here is I reported this to Cobb County DA's office and asked them to investigate the city for corruption because the city's not following the rules. It's that simple. They're not following the rules that are in place. If you look at a city elected official, what they're doing is if they're rewarding Bruton, and Bruton is getting big pay raises, and because of that, Bruton's not following ordinance, and he's not making the other department heads follow ordinance. They're not giving out pay raises like they're supposed to, not developing the proper pay scales and everything else. And basically they're screwing retirees and active employees, and the elected officials' taxes go down, and their income from the city goes up as far as how they'll get their pension benefits. They hold power and prestige in the community because all the community sees is, boy, they keep lowering our taxes, and they've lowered it at least 4 years in a row. So you hold power and prestige in your community, you keep getting reelected, you're increasing the amount of money you'll gain in your pension, and you're reducing how much you're paying in your taxes while you're not following city ordinance, and you're screwing 1,000 people. That's corruption, in my opinion. And I've asked the county DA's office to investigate them. We'll get into that later. So I need to kind of wrap this thing up. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. I bet I've made this video 50 plus times. My voice is about shot. That's about it, guys. I'm doing the best I can. It's just kind of time consuming. Y'all have a happy Thanksgiving and stay safe.